Hello, I'm Dr. Richard Jelusich. Many people call me Dr. J, and I'm so excited to bring you how to enhance your yoga practice with Integrative Chakra Therapy. There are so many yoga schools in abundance today teaching many forms of yoga practice, many types of asanas, many schools of thought, many philosophies. And I found that most of them do not emphasize the depth or the level of the understanding of the chakras as they could. And mostly that's because most of the teachings nowadays of the chakras have been on an anatomical level. What is the color? What is the keynote? How does it affect the parasympathetic nervous system? And so imagine if you are a yoga practitioner and you have a much deeper, broader understanding of the chakra system into how it affects the functioning of the whole human being, would that not increase the level of your practice? Do you agree that this would be helpful? Well, of course. And so I have been teaching integrative chakra therapy now for over 20 years. I have over 500 students and graduates in the US and Canada who have embraced this form of energy medicine as a healing modality. And the course of instruction is set up so that it's efficient for time. For those people who are on the go, the modules are taught on the weekends so that it is inexpensive for those who have perhaps a tight budget. But it also is a step-by-step procedure where you can take these modules in 3 levels. One is to simply enhance your own spiritual awareness, your own spiritual abilities. 2, if you want to go on to become a practitioner of integrative chakra therapy, or ICT as I like to call it. Or number 3, if you'd like to take a further module where you can actually be an instructor of ICT itself. What is a chakra? And so many people nowadays have heard of the chakra system, especially because those of you that have been in yoga practice or philosophy have certainly understood that there are 7 main chakras that are lined up along the column of the spine, and that these are called energy centers that distribute essential prana or chi distribution throughout the body, that they nurture and feed the organs, that they provide the chi to the blood and to the interstitial tissues and to the rest of the body. And of course, a healthy yoga practice helps to increase and balance this essential chi distribution. So a chakra itself is not just a form of energy transfer or energy to the person. It's more a form of consciousness. So imagine, for instance, up and down the column of your spine, you have 7 centers of consciousness, like 7 minds. Instead of just thinking energy like fuel or gas or electricity, think instead of a chakra as a way that the human being is held in space-time. It's a very interesting idea because the chakras themselves are not limited to space or time, and yet you and I, of course, experience space or time every moment of our lives in this level, in this dimension. So these teachings of ICT that I've been training students for 20 years in this work, and I've been doing this work for over 30 years now, is to help the student to understand what the consciousness of a chakra really does. And so, to put it simply, as you feel into this work, you start to understand your own higher awareness sees the chakras as affecting the 4 archetypes of what it is to be a whole human being: mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional states of being. Mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. Those are the 4 archetypes of what constitute the whole human being. So imagine the chakras now as these conduits of consciousness between the spiritual body, or the astral dimension, if you like, and this dimension. And that each chakra has unique abilities, has unique properties, in that each chakra is a lot like a lens in how a person perceives reality through different intuitive abilities. So imagine 7 billion people on the planet with 7 chakras each. All the chakras are open, all the chakras never close, and each chakra is composed of 1 or more intuitive abilities that's open 24/7. We never close. So imagine that a chakra, for instance, affects these 4 archetypes of what it is to be a whole human being, and that chakra has its unique properties. For instance, this chakra here is called the throat chakra, appropriately named, wouldn't you say? It's also called Vishuddhi. Vishuddhi is a Sanskrit name that means to purify. And its main ability of the throat chakra is called telepathy. Telepathy is not, I'm reading your mind. Telepathy is more knowing what the character is of a person, place, or thing. So this is not psychic abilities. A psychic ability is, how much money will I have? Who will I marry? This is more about intuition, about the true spiritual nature of the human being. This is much deeper and much broader than simply learning to be psychic. And so as we go along in our understanding of the chakras, that each one has a unique ability, imagine the telepathy of the throat chakra knows how to articulate that which cannot be known through a higher faculty in the higher sense perceptions, through the intuition. And imagine how that telepathy affects a sense perception of those 4 archetypes: the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. So when students are taking the ICT course, they are not just learning how to make assessments of each chakra and how it affects the whole human being. They're learning how to allow themselves to be perfect conduits of light or of love energy or some ultimate form of energy. I love to use the term God. You can use the term you like, but ultimately the healer is not doing the healing. They are only a conduit for the healing. For the person who is receiving the healing already knows what to do. They're simply healing themselves. And the healer in ICT is simply that conduit. So going back to the throat chakra then, that telepathy, if a person that you're working with has a throat chakra that's not working so well, it would affect how well that telepathy is working. And when we speak of intuition, we're not just talking about how the individual relates to people. Intuition can be anything. It can be a place, a thing, an event. It could be animals. It could be plants. It could be minerals. It could be anything having to do with the understanding and the consciousness of reality. So ICT as a form of energy medicine teaches the healer how to use their chakras to assess the chakras of another person, how to be a conduit of that flow of energy. And it's not a Reiki energy, it's not a type of prana, it's a higher energy that's associated with the chakras themselves, which are not limited to space or time. So that means working on someone remotely. You live in San Diego, let's say, and you want to work on someone in New York, is no problem. And so the second part of this work is to make the assessment. The healer actually assesses the chakra strength of the individual, and in this case of the throat chakra would say, oh, well, it seems that the throat chakra is deficient. And when a throat chakra is deficient, it means this, this, and that. So how does this apply to a yoga practice, and of what use is it to you? If you're a yoga practitioner and you are in your asanas and you are working with particular chakras, as you do this work, it actually helps to stimulate your own chakras to awaken. As a chakra awakens, it illuminates in the practitioner a higher level of awareness. So what is that awareness and why is it valuable? So for instance, anything that's printed can have information. And so you can look at the information and say, oh, this information becomes knowledge. Okay? And knowledge with experience can become wisdom, right? So if you have a certain amount of knowledge over time with your experience, it can turn into a form of wisdom. But wisdom can only become realization with awareness. And awareness is not conceptual thinking. It's not imagination. It is what is called a qualitative state that is beyond the level of time and space. And so this is what the chakras truly represent. is a higher wisdom within yourself that is just waiting to be awakened. So imagine as the chakras awaken, what levels of awareness you would achieve. And that's precisely what the modules and the course in Integrative Chakra Therapy will teach you over time. Students learn in a loving and safe environment, very sacred container that we set, where the classes are taught lecture style. The lectures are recorded for your use, as is the PowerPoint. And then in the afternoons, you will have a practicum where you'll actually be in practice even on day one. And our courses are usually taught on the weekends, which makes it so convenient and so easy for people to schedule their time to work on the weekends in these classes. And then you have time in between the modules to be able to practice in group or to practice with us. And so in this way, when you're awakening your chakras to higher levels of awareness, imagine how it can enhance and illuminate your yoga practice. Whether you are a practitioner of yoga, whether you are in yoga teacher training, whether you are an instructor of yoga, or whether you own your yoga school, Integrative Chakra Therapy is of incredible help to expand your levels of awareness in how the human being is both a physical and a non-physical being. This is one of the most interesting and most difficult aspects when one takes a certain spiritual practices and works to really understand what is the whole human being. We have been told many times that we are luminous beings of light beyond time and space who also have a physical presence. But the thing is, those are both just two sides of the same coin. They're not separate. They are the same thing. So again, one of the most beautiful and yet most difficult parts of the truth of our spiritual nature is that we are both non-physical and physical. And so the word integration has become so very popular. You'll notice in the 90s how the yoga schools really started to take off because people were not just doing it only for stretching and tonifying the body, which it does, but for gaining a deeper spiritual understanding and accessing that place of stillness and that place of peace within themselves. Because original yoga practice was all about contemplation and meditation and self-awakening. Now you see yoga is so very popular. You know, my book that I wrote a couple of books on the chakras, of course, and my book has been used in yoga schools as a part of the necessary curriculum for yoga teacher training certification. And many of my students and graduates are yoga practitioners, but also they are instructors as well. In 2015 and again in 2017, a Kundalini yoga instructor and I led groups to the Blue Spirit Resort in Nosara, Costa Rica for a 5-day intensive workshop in Kundalini yoga and the chakra system. And between the practice of the Kundalini yoga and the practice of understanding the chakras in both lecture and in experiential exercises, the students had a much deeper and broader connection to the understanding of the whole human being and what is the spiritual nature and how all that works. Bottom line, they became more astute to the whole human being, but they also became more aware. And so we have been teaching these students for many years. The real work is what the student accomplishes for themselves. You as a yoga practitioner know for yourself that as you practice the yoga, you gain results. And we know that, for instance, if you go to the gym and you lift the weight always weighs the same, but over time, it is you that changes. The weight is always the same weight, but the you that is yourself that changes. So how do we know that ICT is effective? How would you feel more certain that this course of study is for you? Well, for one thing, we do have scientific verification. Last year, in 2017, at a symposium offered at the California Institute for Human Science, I was able to show statistical verification using a device called the gas discharge visualization technique, which is an interesting name for a technique that uses a form of Kirlian photography to measure the human biofield. And the human biofield is a popular term that was created in the early 90s as a general way to talk about the human aura. You know, what is that field of energy that composes us here in this dimension? And so in this symposium, I was able to show in this pilot study that 10 minutes of integrative chakra therapy was effective in changing aspects in both the physical body and organs and the energy body and its constituent forms of energy related to the organs and the chakras of the person. And we were able to show more chakra alignment after just 10 minutes of ICT therapy. And so as this course evolves, you might say, well, you know, is there a process to this? Are there steps that I have to take? And, you know, how am I going to start this out? Well, the first weekend is simply an introductory weekend where you will learn the basics of the human biofield. And the biofield technically is the 7 chakras, the Ida and the Pingala, the twin serpents of the Kundalini, and a column of light that goes up and down the spine called Sushumna. Sushumna. And those 3 elements, the 7 chakras, the Ida and the Pingala, and the Sushumna, are the 3 elements that make up the human biofield. And why is that important? Because the biofield, or as what was known as the aura, is what holds you in time and space. You don't radiate the biofield. The biofield radiates you. It is yourself on a higher level holding you in space-time. And I know that sounds really interesting, but the way that the process or that these levels are created is iterative, step by step. In week 1, you learn the basics. You learn about the human biofield. You learn about the basics of the chakras, and you're up and doing practicum on the very first day, working with each other, working to stimulate your own chakras in the safety way, in an environment that is very conducive to your own academic understanding, because there is lecture material and there is some science so that you have a solid background in how this works, but there's plenty of practice as well so that you can get a feeling yourself. Interestingly enough, everybody has intuitive abilities. Because you have 7 chakras that are on 24/7, by definition, it means that your intuitive abilities are on 24/7. We never close. It's just that we're all different. Just in the same way that we sit in a room and we look around the room and we perceive the environment differently, and yet we're all people, we each perceive psychically differently. So as I said in the very beginning of this webinar, that we have unique abilities in each chakra. The throat chakra is telepathy, the heart chakra is empathy. But we use those abilities differently. So for instance, if you are using your intuition, maybe you see things in an intuitive way. That's called clairvoyance, to see what cannot be seen. Maybe you hear things, or maybe you just know. That's called clairsentience. Interestingly too, because in my work of doing spiritual counseling all over the world, I have clients on every continent, that sometimes a person will have an experience that we're tuning into, and especially when I'm working with women, and I guess an even more exact circumstance would be when training in ICT, because most of my students and graduates are women, and my point being is that many women have an intuitive ability that's based on the nuance of a feeling. Like the slightest little movement is more captivating to the intuition for many women than some big flashing esoteric spiritual light going off over the energy field of the person. And so the thing is that we have all these various abilities. And I teach you how to embrace the ability that you have. So you may see, or you may hear, or you may feel, or you may touch, or you may just know, or you may have the nuances. But all of these abilities, they all go to the same place. Because as you continue to use your abilities, what you're really doing is you're really stimulating your chakras to awaken in a very safe and loving environment. So as these abilities continue to awaken, initially, you're going to use your ability and see through different lenses of chakras. But when you're working on the person who is, let's say, laying on the table before you, you're going to observe their chakras as strong, weak, deficient. And so that's just even in the first weekend of introduction, of understanding the human biofield, of understanding the basic mechanics of the chakras. You're going to come away in that weekend more knowing about the chakras than most people would know in a lifetime. And then the levels progress. Some levels are about techniques, how to adjust the chakras between dimensions, which sounds very fascinating and very, very interesting. Some of the levels are about out-of-body techniques, how to take a person out of body when necessary, how to work on someone remotely, like say if they are in a different city than you are. Levels of attachments, if someone is suffering an energy drain and they don't know what is draining the energy from them. Levels related to philosophy. One of the levels we have is a beautiful level, and it's called protection versus availability. And we talk about a subject called the feminine principle. And the feminine principle is using the power of the will to allow instead of push. To allow instead of push. So for instance, when the healers are working, they are working under my personal instruction. And I will be in the room with you, and I may say things like, give yourself permission to be excellent at what you do. And I think that sometimes when students hear that, they give myself permission. How do I do that? Because what is within you, as you know, so many masters have said, what is within you is already perfect. There's nothing to purify. There's only to access that which is already pure within you. There have been many saints that talk about this very thing. You know, you could not be closer to source than you already are, but you can reveal that. So in this way, ICT offers the exciting opportunity for the practitioner or for a person who just wants to take it for their own spiritual development, or for someone who wants to become an instructor. It offers you levels that you can take that will help you grow at a pace that works for you. And I'm right there with you, working with you every step of the way. We know that this works because many of our practitioners have come back to us and have told us how it has enhanced their practice. I have acupuncturists and doctors and people in the energy medicine and energy psychology fields who have come back to me and told me how integral ICT has been to helping their practice to grow and to help them have a greater understanding of how they can reach their students. However, if you are a yoga practitioner and you're not an instructor and you don't have a studio, but you want to have a broader and deeper understanding of your own yoga practice, Integrative Chakra Therapy is definitely for you. So what would it take to become a student? Simply to apply and register. We teach courses all the time in the US and in Canada. The locations are very easy to get to, and they're very easy to navigate. I'm just checking my notes here to make sure I'm covering everything for you. The thing is that we talk about in this work, what is the outcome? You know, in so many courses we say, well, why would I take this and what is the benefit? You know, it's a very interesting thing. I wanted to check my notes because I wanted to talk to you about an inner realization that happens to the person that takes the ICT course. It's a guaranteed outcome because it's no different than if you went to the gym and your instructor told you to lift these weights in this way for this amount of time. You know, if you did that faithfully for 10 months, what would happen to your muscle? Of course, your muscle would become much stronger, but also it would become more toned. And again, my earlier reference was the weight doesn't change, you change. So why would a person take ICT? Because what it does is it helps you through using these useful tools in a helpful building block manner to go to deeper states of inner realization, of inner awakening. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to understand how much you can change. A great example is to say if you were a butterfly and you happened upon a caterpillar and you were so excited to tell that caterpillar, look, I've got news for you. There's going to come a time when you're going to go under metamorphosis and you're going to become a chrysalis in a cocoon. And there's going to be a lot of changes in your life. But you know, when you emerge, you're going to have these things called wings, and you're going to be able to do this, and you won't need those 100 pairs of Nikes on your feet anymore crawling around on the ground, because you're going to be flying to where you want to go. So what's the caterpillar going to say to you? The caterpillar is going to look at you and say, well, I hear you. I think I can perceive a benefit. But the thing with spiritual growth is you can only know when you go through it yourself. You can describe it to someone else. You know, I can tell you about the authority and the testimonials of people who have taken my training over the past 20 years in the US and Canada. I can tell you about the scientific proof. I can tell you about the happy outcome of so many students who would go through the course, and some of them would say, I don't get it, Dr. J. I just don't understand. I don't get it. And then all of a sudden, boom, the light goes on and they get it, and then they come back and they're so happy. Well, the metamorphosis starts by trusting what you feel, then applying what you know. And again, with our intuitive abilities, we all have them, but most of us have not cultivated the intuitive abilities. We have not gone to the gym and worked out with the intuitive abilities, mainly because there have been not so many schools that help you to enhance and awaken more of what these intuitive abilities represent. So when you practice in this way, you're going to achieve results. Being a butterfly and going through the course happens when it happens. It's just like looking at a fruit orchard. You know, different fruit comes to its fruition separately. So, you know, you could have your fellow practitioners in a room and you all grow at your own rate. And that's what we want to encourage in ICT, is that you grow at a rate that is comfortable for you. The classes include reflective practices so that you can actually do your own practice work and write down how that is for you and how it works. And then, of course, there is a feedback, a reciprocity, where we work with you to help you at your own pace to grow. And then the light goes on. And so when we trust what we feel, sometimes that feels vulnerable because we always like to apply what we know in a more rational sense. We want to know that what we're doing has value. We want to be practical and pragmatic. The spiritual path doesn't work that way. You cannot just reach a level of awareness without some faith. And I know this word faith has been very overused, but faith is trusting with your heart what your mind cannot yet know. And you could be a highly intellectual person, but not awaken so much spiritually, because spiritual means beyond the physical. And so a lot of people have trouble with that because they have trouble embracing something that they can't physically, empirically verify. And that's what integrative science has been proving for years in quantum theory, quantum physics, entanglement, and so forth. We now know that one person can send energy at a distance and make instant, measurable effects in the biometrics of the person that they sent energy to. This is no longer smoke and mirrors. This is real. And we're living in an era where all of this knowledge and all of these abilities are now spread out before us like a smorgasbord, where we have the opportunity to grow in spiritual ways as caterpillars going to butterflies we cannot imagine, and yet there it is. So to trust what you feel means your intuition is working 24/7. It's already on. And to trust with your heart what your mind cannot yet know means to trust what the intuition is telling you before you have all of the answers practically. And I've applied this myself many times in this life. You know, I've moved from one place to another intuitively, not knowing where. And in 1992, I ended up moving to a place called Leucadia in northern San Diego County, not knowing that this amazing institute would open up called the California Institute for Human Science, which is a graduate school and research center, a premier center for mind-body-spirit integration that opened its doors in 1992. And today, I am lead faculty and I am the chair of the board of directors for CIHS. And it is a moving institution in the integration of mind, body, spirit. And so I'm very excited to be a part of this growth so that I also benefit from all of the research that has been done that proves the existence of the spiritual energy body, the astral body of the human being, the one that we all see mediums contacting like John Edwards and Sylvia Brown and so forth. That's very, very real. The thing that makes it unique is just that. Each person must awaken themselves separately. So we go back to yoga practice and how would it benefit you? In a yoga practice, whether it's Swata Yoga or Burkham Yoga, Ashtanga, Hatha, you know, there are so many, Kriya Yoga, there's so many types of yogas that are just fascinating and absolutely helpful for a person to grow in both the body, in the mind, but also in the spirit. And so integrative chakra therapy can be useful for any of these yogas because it works at the fundamental level of the chakras where we even come into this dimension at all, where it even happens that we are affected by the mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional states. So if you are a yoga practitioner and you want to enhance your practice, if you want to become an ICT practitioner and use it with your yoga practice, if you want to become an instructor of ICT, then this is the place for you. I heartily encourage you to trust what your feelings are telling you. The spiritual path, as I said, is incredibly unique. It's very intimate. Several sages have said the only way to know God is with a direct revelatory awareness, a direct revelation. And it's very interesting because we read a lot from awakened men and women about what is the spiritual path, about how it works. And we become so enticed, we become so enamored, we become so spiritually full of gratitude and full of acceptance that we start to embrace this feminine principle of using the power of the will to allow instead of push. Remember, give yourself permission to be excellent at what you do. And so this is the intimacy of this path. And what integrative chakra therapy does is it helps you to self-empower, self-awaken, self-realize. Remember, what you're doing in this course is you are actually using your chakras to work with the chakras of the person on the table or remotely. And so using your chakras is no different than going to the gym and lifting that weight. You're doing in a very safe and sacred container, so that this is the safety way of doing this, but you're doing so in a way that is designed for you to awaken yourself, for you to awaken yourself. So it's highly intuitive, it's highly interactive, it is highly intimate. It is only a choice that you can make for yourself. Trust what you feel, then apply what you know. Use this webinar to stimulate your spiritual growth in the direction that you feel is going to benefit you the most, that will empower your life and your decisions. Remember how energy works. 95% of who we are is not verbal or physical. It's energy. 95%. So that means as you increase your spiritual practice, as you increase your vibrations or your frequency, that goes out to all of your relations, whether it's familial or parental or social or work related. It goes out to all creation. And it has been said that if you really, really want to help evolve the world, you simply keep evolving yourself first, because from that position of higher levels of awareness, as you awaken your higher sense perceptions, you begin to see things more and more as they are. So please understand, this is not about becoming more psychic. Everyone's psychic. This is about increasing the power of your intuition to awaken your chakras through a safe, methodical practice that can offer healing to other people or can be for just your own spiritual development. And in this way, you achieve higher states of awareness, that you become more self-empowered, more purposeful, more directed, and it can only enhance and enliven your yoga practice. If you would like more information, I would be happy to share with you. In fact, if you have a yoga school or know of someone with a yoga school, I am more than happy to come and offer a free lecture at your school. Whether it's in person or if you are a great distance away, I'm happy to set up by Skype or by Zoom and give your class or your fellow students a free lecture. Simply just click on the link below and contact me, and I'm happy to help you. Remember, the path is unique, and the more you're willing to trust with your heart what your mind cannot yet know, the more you're willing to trust in that spiritual essence of yourself, the more inner directed your path will be. I thank you so much. I'm Dr. J, and I hope you had a great experience in this webinar. Thank you.